There's a quiet moment that happens more often than people admit. You meet someone new, and everything seems fine on the surface. They're kind, they're interesting, they're present, and yet something feels slightly off. Not wrong, just not quite enough. And you don't say it out loud, but your mind does something subtle. It starts comparing, not in an obvious way, not consciously, just small, almost invisible measurements. The way they laugh compared to someone else, the way they text compared to someone else, the way they look at you compared to someone you're still thinking about. And no matter how good this new person is, they keep falling just short of someone who isn't even there. Most people would call this unfair. Some might even call it unhealthy. They might say you're stuck in the past, or that you're being too idealistic. But people who experience this know it doesn't feel that simple. Because it's not really about choosing one person over another. It feels more like your mind is holding on to something unfinished, something that never fully settled. And without realizing it, everything new gets filtered through that one memory. There's a pattern hidden in this, something deeper than preference. Because the person you keep comparing everyone to usually isn't just someone you liked. It's someone who left an imprint, not just emotionally, but neurologically. There's a concept in psychology where certain emotional experiences become reference points. Your brain uses them as a baseline to interpret future interactions, not because it wants to hold you back, but because it's trying to recognize what felt meaningful before. And when something once felt intense, confusing, or incomplete, it tends to stay active longer, almost like an open loop your mind keeps trying to close. This is why the comparison doesn't feel intentional. It happens quietly, automatically. Your brain isn't asking, is this person better? It's asking, does this feel the same? And when it doesn't, it registers as absence. Even if what's in front of you is healthy, even if it's stable, even if it's exactly what you once thought you needed, there's a small, almost unnoticeable hesitation that appears. A pause before you fully lean in. And sometimes, you don't even understand why it's there. Some people notice it in the way they reread old conversations. Not because they want to go back, but because something about those words still feels more alive. Some people catch themselves waiting for a certain kind of message, a tone, a timing, a feeling that only one person ever created. And when it doesn't happen, they feel a quiet disappointment they can't explain. Others notice it in silence, when they're with someone new, and everything is calm, but their mind drifts, almost involuntarily, to someone else. Not because they want to replace the present, but because the past still feels unfinished. If you've ever noticed yourself doing this, you're definitely not alone. And if you enjoy exploring these quiet patterns of human psychology, subscribing to the channel helps more people discover these insights. What makes this even more complex is that the person you're comparing everyone to isn't always who they actually were. It's who your mind remembers them as. And memory doesn't store reality perfectly. It edits. It highlights certain moments and softens others, especially emotional ones. There's an idea that psychologists like Daniel Kahneman have explored, that our remembering self doesn't experience life the same way our present self does. It reconstructs, it simplifies, it turns long, complicated experiences into a few defining emotional snapshots. And those snapshots become powerful, sometimes more powerful than reality itself. So what you're comparing people to isn't always a person. It's a feeling, a very specific emotional signature your brain learned to recognize. Maybe it was intensity. Maybe it was unpredictability. Maybe it was the way that person made you feel seen, but only sometimes. And that inconsistency created something strong. Because the brain doesn't always attach deeply to what is stable. It often attaches to what is emotionally charged, what is uncertain, what feels like it could be lost at any moment. That kind of connection leaves deeper marks, not because it's better, but because it's harder to resolve. And this is where something quietly important happens. You're not just comparing people, you're comparing emotional experiences. And the new ones often feel calmer, more predictable, less overwhelming, which, on paper, should feel safer. But your brain doesn't always interpret calm as meaningful, especially if it learned that meaning comes with intensity. So instead of feeling fulfilled, you feel like something is missing, even when nothing is actually wrong. There's also a deeper layer to this. Sometimes, the person you keep comparing everyone to represents a version of yourself, a version that existed only in that connection. Maybe you were more open, more expressive, more alive in ways you don't fully feel anymore. So when you miss them, you're also missing who you were with them. And every new person, without realizing it, gets compared to that version of you too. Not just to them, but to how you felt in their presence. That's why this pattern can feel so difficult to break, because it's not just about letting go of a person. It's about letting go of a state of being, and your mind hesitates, because part of it wonders if that feeling is replaceable, or if it was something rare, something that only happened once. There's a quiet fear hidden in that question, not loud enough to notice directly, but strong enough to influence how you connect moving forward. So instead of fully stepping into something new, you stay slightly guarded, slightly observant, always, in some small way, comparing. But here's the part that often goes unnoticed. This doesn't mean you're incapable of moving on. It means your mind is trying to protect a meaningful experience. Even if that experience wasn't perfect, even if it hurt, there's no judgment in this pattern. It's not a flaw. It's not a weakness. It's a form of emotional memory doing exactly what it was designed to do, holding on to what felt significant, trying to make sense of what didn't fully resolve, and quietly guiding you towards something that feels familiar, even if familiar isn't always what you need. Because sometimes, what felt intense wasn't actually what felt safe, and sometimes, what feels calm now is something your mind hasn't fully learned to trust yet. That's the paradox. The thing you compare everyone to might not have been right for you, but it shaped how you recognize connection, and that shape takes time to change. The final layer of this is subtle. You don't stop comparing when you forget someone. You stop comparing when your emotional baseline shifts, when your mind learns a new definition of connection, not one built on intensity or absence, but one built on presence, consistency, clarity. And that shift doesn't happen through force. It happens slowly, through new experiences that feel safe enough to stay and meaningful enough to matter. Until one day, almost without noticing, you meet someone, and your mind doesn't reach back. It doesn't compare. It just experiences. And that's when you realize something changed. Not because the past disappeared, but because it finally settled. So if you've been comparing people to someone who still lingers in your mind, it doesn't mean you're stuck. It means something in you is still processing, still learning, still redefining what connection means. And that process, as quiet as it is not broken. It's human. There are many patterns like this hidden in the way we connect with others. And sometimes, understanding them is the first moment things begin to shift. If this felt familiar, there may be other parts of your inner world waiting to be understood.